Hello, everyone. Welcome to Business Analytics Programming. This is week 4. Last week, we introduced the for loop. And this week, we're going to introduce another very important skill in programming, that is an if statement, where we're going to make different decisions and choices based on conditions. Before we go to the if statement in more detail, let's focus on the conditions. The computer program actually make decisions based on evaluating the conditions, and the conditions can have two outcomes, basically true or false. Based on the condition is true or false, the computer, the program, is going to make different decisions based on the outcome or based on the input of the condition. And sometimes the condition can be fairly complicated, but we're going to start from the simple ones and we're going to build complicated conditions in the future. But for complicated conditions, it all start with the smaller ones, simple ones, and we can combine those conditions together with the simple ones. And there are typically numerical value comparisons as well as string value comparisons. For numerical value comparisons is fairly simple. That is, there's one particular numerical value and we compare it with another numerical value. And for example, if we want to check whether those two values are the same, we use this double equal operator. And if we want to try to find out whether one value is larger than another one, we use the larger than operator, or larger than equal operator, or less than, or less or equal operator. And there's also a not equal operator, which is right here. This operator is used to check whether those two values are the same or not. If they're the same, it's going to return false. If they're not the same, they're going to return as true. So at the end of the day, when you evaluate a condition, it will be either true or false. So we call that Boolean values. There's only two outcomes, true or false, for one condition. And we can judge the conditions by numerical comparison or string comparison. We can use a combination of those, as it is mentioned. And this is actually a few simple examples about the numerical value comparison. Like the first one, 5 is 5 equal to 5, and the result is true. Is 5 larger than or equal to 3, and the result is true. And is 5 less than or equal to 3, the result is actually false. Is 5 not equal to 3, is actually true. So that is 4 simple examples. For the string value comparison, there are a very rich comparisons we can do, but the two very common one is whether they are equal to each other or not. So like for example, in this particular one, I have BMW all in lowercase, and I have AUDI at the other side, and those two strings definitely they're not the same. So when we compare whether they're the same or not, the return is false. And please remember, when we compare strings, it is really case sensitive. So if the BMW and on the right is capital B, MW, and they're actually not the same. If you compare those two strings, you got the result is false. And this A and B, they're not equal to each other, and we're trying to compare whether A and B are not equal. The answer is true. So this is very simple cases where we can make comparisons. And comparisons is very important in programming because it gives us different branches for the code to run, different branches we can assign values to a particular variable. And it has everyday examples as well. And here I list a few examples where we do need these evaluate different conditions and make different choices based on the different conditions, different choices and different actions based on different conditions. Like for example, zoo entrance fee based on different age group. We know for zoo and other facilities, they usually have different fee structures based on different age. And in computer system, we can design that use a if statement with different conditions and compare the customer's age with different age group. And the tax rate based on the income group. That is also we can use the if statement and different conditions to calculate different tax rate. Similarly, there are tuition fees based on residential status, in-state or out-of-state, and more hours based on day of the week and holidays, and the insurance rate based on the type of vehicle, driver's age, and the previous accident report. So sometimes it's one, sometimes the combination, and credit card approval based on credit scores. So those are the examples that where we can see there's a clear application of the different conditions, and based on the different conditions, we can use the if statement to make different choice or different actions. And there are some common errors in evaluate conditions. The most common one for someone who are new to programming is when some of us may use equal sign instead of this double equal to check whether they're equal or the same. So if you use only one equal sign here, in Python it's usually used to assign the value to the variables. There are no comparison used at all in that particular case. So you can do some of those check by your own and make some mistakes, and then you can learn from the mistake you made intentionally. So that's one common mistake. Remember, if you want to check whether two numbers are the same or whether two strings are the same, use this double equal sign here. Okay, now we have some good understanding about different conditions. Let's go to the if statement. In if statement, I'm going to show the structure of the if statement through a very simple example. That is the zoo entrance fee structure. In this very simple if statement, I actually find a customer whose age is 15 that I'm trying to find out what is the fee that he or she need to pay based on his or her age. Okay, so first I assign 15 to age. This is a variable, so age is going to have the value of 15. I'm going to use the if statement to try to find out the fee structures. The first one is what usually happen is if someone's age is less than a particular number, in this case 4, they are actually viewed as keys. Keys usually can enter the zoo for free. So the fee will be 0 if the age is less than 4. So in the if statement, we can see that there's a keyword if to start the if statement, and there is a condition that we need to evaluate whether this condition is true or false. And there's a colon here to indicate the following indentation line will be included as the procedures. And now that's the indentation. It's very similar to the for statement that we learned last week. When there's if statement, we need an indentation to indicate the statement within the if statement. Actually, in if statement, we can have different blocks. This is the first block. The second block is like the logic is like that. if the age is less than 4, if it is true, if this condition is true, then this block is going to be executed. And then once this block is executed, the program is going to skip all the rest and down to the code after the if statement. If that statement is actually false, then it's going to the next block to evaluate whether the next condition is true or false. If the age is 15 as we assigned, so the first condition will be false. So this one is not going to be executed. It's going to automatically to the next block, which is else if. This is the age is not less than 4. Then will that be the age will be less than 12? That is else if kind of statement. And we do this comparison of this condition again, and we found out it's false again because age is 15. So now it is false, so this part is not going to be executed as well. Then let's go to the next one, which is, okay, it's the above two statements are all false. Now let's do the third one. Is the age less than 65? It actually has become true. When it is true, at the first time when it's become true in all the statement, it's going to execute the block, follow the true statement. So that is basically we're going to assign the fee to be 10. Because this is already true, so it's going to escape the last one and go print the fee here, which as we expected is going to be 10. So when we go through the whole process, the if statement is basically a kind of branch. You have different kind of branch of the code you can go through, and which branch or which segment you're going to do is based on the conditions. And it is very important to notice, as I put in here, when there are multiple blocks within the if segment, that is true here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 different blocks with this if segment. The conditions will be checked sequentially from the first block. So it is going to first check whether the age is less than 4. If it is true, then it's going to execute the first block and skip the rest. So once it finds the one condition that is true, it skips the rest of the condition. In that particular one, it actually started with the first condition and it's false. The second condition, it is false. So it is actually reached the third condition. It is true. So it's going to execute the third block and escape the last block. So that's how the different branches or how different kind of blocks are executed in the if statement. This is one example of the if statement. Based on the need, there are actually a few different variations of the if statement. You can have a simple if statement, which basically is only one block. You can have the if and else statement, which basically you're going to have only 2 blocks. So those intermediate block is going to be disappears. Sometimes you need a simple if statement. Sometimes you need a if else statement. And the most kind of a common one is the if else chain, where it's similar like those. You can have multiple else if blocks, or you can just have one else if blocks. You can have as many as else if statement blocks as you need it based on your problem. But all those different variations will be covered in the textbook. So you can look through your textbook to give you some idea of how each different variations of the if statement is actually used. So this is a very simple introduction of the if statement. In the previous page, we used the if statement with only one piece of condition, that is whether the age is larger than whether the age is less than or larger than by a particular precise number. But when we have multiple conditions and we need to combine different conditions, that's where we're going to use these multiple condition connectors. So let's suppose we have two conditions here, A and B. Both is actually going to be in Boolean value, whether it's going A and B can be both. Either can be true or false, and the other one can be true or false. And then there are two different ways to combine those two conditions. One is using AND, the other one is using OR. And 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 OR, they have different behaviors. Okay, so in this particular case, I list how the AND operator is going to work. So the AND operator work is when A and B are both true, then C is true. Otherwise, C is false. Okay, so we have all the combinations with A and B. A can be true, true, AB can be true, 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 false, false, true, or false, false. And when we combine those two conditions, the outcome are actually, in this particular case, saved as a C. And C, again, is a condition which is combined both A and B. C is only true when A and B are true. In all other conditions, it's going to be false. So this is the AND condition. For the OR condition, it is actually different. The OR condition basically, when one of A or B is true, then C is true, which means when A and B are both true, C is true. When A is true, B is false, C will be true. When A is false, B is true, then C will be true. The only case C is false when both A and B are false. So that is A or B. This is the A and B. A and B means when A is true and B is true, the combination will be true. Other conditions will be false. A or B, that is C is true when A is true or B is true. The only case C is false is both A and B are false. So those are the two different ways to combine two different conditions. And also there are a third kind of operation on a single condition, which is NOT. NOT is basically take the other side of B. Like for example, B can be true or false. Not B is basically when B is true, not B is false. When B is false, not B is going to be true. So it sounds like a little bit complicated, but actually when you use it for a few times, you're going to know the details. There are actually three simple examples that I showed here. You can actually go through that one by one to understand what to really mean by AND, OR, and NOT operator for different conditions. And by the way, when you want to have a clear kind of picture of what are the conditions are compared, I encourage you to use parentheses to group operations to have a better visual interpretation. Like for example, this particular one, there's two condition, h1 larger than 5. The second condition is h2 larger than 15. And based on Python's kind of rule, AND, NOT, OR has less priority in operation than comparison operators such as all those. So in theory, you do not need to put the parentheses around your each condition, and it's going to run just fine. But for visual interpretation, it is always better practice to use parentheses to group your operations. And when you put a parenthesis around, then it tells the program that they're going to evaluate whatever within a parenthesis first, and then compare with the others. Okay, the if statement can also be used with list. There are two examples that I showed here. Is related to how we can use the if statement with a list. So in this particular one, I create a list called cars, which has 3 elements, and I create another variable called my car, and it is basically just one variable. It contains AUDI. In this particular one, that is if my underscore car in cars. In this particular if statement, it is a if-else statement. The condition is basically my car in cars. That statement becomes true if this variable is included in the list. This statement is false if my underscore car is not in this list. In this particular example, my underscore car, which is part of the cars list, so this statement, this condition is going to be true. So the first block of the code is going to be executed, which is exactly as what I expected. The output is Audi is in the list. So it's going to skip the rest part. So that is one way to check whether any one or multiple element is within a list or not by using this statement. Another useful statement to check is to check whether a list is empty or not. Here I created an empty list. There's no element within that list. And then I put in if a underscore list. Is a if else statement. In this particular one, the a underscore list is empty. There's nothing in it. And so a underscore list become itself, that is become a true. That is, it is empty. And then in the a underscore list, it is, if it is empty, then it's going to be false. If it's true, if there are some element within, it will be true. So in this particular one, a underscore list is empty. So when I do the if a list statement, it is going to return a false condition. The condition will be false. Then it's going to print the second block. That is, an empty list will be printed. So remember, if a list is empty, when we call the if statement here, then it's going to be false. If it's not empty, then it's going to be true. So that is how if statement can be used with list. So that's pretty much all the introduction for the list for the if statement. For the if statement, it sounds like a very simple piece of knowledge, but it's really important. And for all the business applications, the if statement determine different paths that the program can go. And in real case, can be very complicated. You need a very complicated conditions to be evaluated, and different conditions can be combined, become a even more complicated conditions. But by the end of the day, any conditions, there's only 2 outcomes, true or false. And based on the true or false, you can decide what segment of the code that it needs to run. Okay, here's the homework for week 4. For this homework, first read chapter 5 of the textbook. Very similarly to the previous homework, type and run all the Python codes in chapter 5 of the textbook. Use a Python notebook in your Databricks Community Edition. Then save your notebook with code and run result into a HTML file and submit into eCollege. For business analytics 523 student, there are one additional step. At page 93 of the textbook, try it yourself, 5-11, ordinal numbers. So finish 5-11 in a notebook in Databricks Community Edition and save your notebook with code and result into a HTML file and submit it to eCollege. If you prefer, you can actually combine those 2 and 3 into one HTML file. That's it. That's the due date will be Sunday night. Thanks everyone. See you next week.